I love when a watch kicks up a spicy conversation. I like a good argument. Not every watch that inspires debate is a good watch, but every good watch does inspire debate. People are talking about this new Zenith Chronomaster Sport, but which kind of watch is it? Let's start with the facts. This Zenith Chronomaster Sport was announced in January 2021 and is a continuation of the El Primero Chronomaster Sport line. Zenith has a long history with automatic chronographs, as long as anyone, in fact. There's a lot of info on the internet about the El Primero movement and its place in horological history, so I'm not going to go into that now. But I remember when I was just getting into watches, a Rolex salesperson showed me a Daytona and said that it had a movement made by Zenith. I'd never heard of Zenith, or was it Zenith? But it was clear to me, even in that moment, that this Zenith company must be a highly regarded manufacturer. This Chronomaster Sport is all steel. It has a diameter of 41 millimeters, a thickness of just over 13 millimeters, and a length of about 46 millimeters. The lug width is 20 millimeters, and it's water resistant to 100 meters. This is the white dial version. There's also a black dial version. On a rubber strap, the price is $9,500 US, and on the steel bracelet, it's $10,000. I absolutely prefer the white dial to the black. I know I'm often in the minority when it comes to my dial color preferences. I find white dials easier to read. With a white dial, you're much less likely to see reflections off of the watch's crystal, because more light is actually reflecting back from the dial itself through the crystal. And in the case of the Chronomaster, the white dial makes for a higher contrast, more interesting appearance, I think. And that contrast is most prominent between the dial and the bezel. The bezel on all references of this watch is made of polished black ceramic. The etched numerals are painted white and are crisply done. I love a ceramic bezel. You get much of the bling of a polished metal surface without the painful nicks and dings that are common with most metals. I also like that ceramic can enable the use of different colors that will stay vibrant even after years of ultraviolet exposure. Zenith has been experimenting a lot with ceramic over the last few years, not just with bezels, but with entire cases. So this use of ceramic is actually one of the more staid applications I've seen from them. That high contrast that I like so much also extends to the dial and its subdials. Light gray, anthracite, and navy blue. El Primeros have had this subdial styling since 1969, including the slight overlap of the registers. It's unique and interesting without being overwhelming or gaudy. It's a subtle hallmark of the El Primero that I've always liked. The registers have a fine concentric guilloche pattern, which from a distance gives them the appearance of a metallic finish. The subdial hands have a touch of red paint, which adds a nice splash of color and helps with the legibility. The main dial's markers are polished. They have lume on their inner bevels, and I think black paint on their tops. This is another design element from vintage El Primeros, and it really makes the markers more visible than they would be if their tops were simply polished metal. The main hour and minute hands also have lume. Their brightness is fine, but it's not going to win any awards. That's partially because there are no lume awards, yet, but also because this isn't anything special. Surprisingly, I don't have any issue with the date window at 4:30. I think the dial is busy enough that, hey, what's another thing in the bottom corner? At least it's nicely finished. But clearly the most dynamic part of the dial is the chronograph's second hand. And what it's doing is pretty special. It's not measuring seconds like nearly every other chronograph in the world, and it's not even measuring hundredths of a second like the Defy El Primero I reviewed. This Chronomaster measures tenths of a second. To do this, Zenith had to make two things happen. One is to make the second hand rotate fully around the dial every 10 seconds. And two is to use a movement that beats 36,000 times per hour, or 10 times per second. It just so happens that this is the beat rate that most El Primero movements use. This is Zenith showing off, and I dig it. While I'm not really interested in measuring tenths of a second, it is kinda handy to have a large legible way of tracking 10 seconds. The movement making this happen is the fairly new El Primero Calibre 3600. This movement made its debut in the limited edition Titanium Chronomaster 2 in early 2019, so this is the first time the Calibre 3600 movement has appeared in a non-limited watch. This thing is a real looker. The finishing is modern, somewhat austere, and really appealing to me. I like that there's no perlage or Geneva stripes. That wouldn't match the style of this watch. And I'm certainly glad it's visible. I always prefer to see the miracle of mechanical movements, even if one is totally unfinished. The Calibre 3600 uses a column wheel and lateral clutch system. It has 60 hours of power reserve, and it's made of 311 components. The bracelet is fine. I think it's the weak point in a very strong watch. The shape and feel are good, it's light, it tapers nicely. The polished center links look good initially but scratch easily. There's an irony to fitting a watch with a scratch-proof ceramic bezel, but a bracelet that ages like a chain smoker in the desert. Lots of brands do this, and I'm over it. The clasp doesn't feel up to the $10,000 price tag. There are clasps from IWC and Tudor that are much better at half the price, though I do appreciate the 5 micro-adjustment positions. Thankfully, I think the Chronomaster goes great with straps. If I owned this watch, it would live a polyamorous strap lifestyle. None of what I've said already is the reason the Chronomaster has inspired debate. Nope. What some people are bothered by is that this watch kinda looks like the current Rolex Daytona. I get it. They have similar dial layouts, black ceramic bezels, and the bracelets look alike. I have no problem with this, but if you do, don't buy it. To me, this Chronomaster is the more interesting watch. The movement is unlike anything else. The dial is more considered and better finished. It embraces the use of colors rather than fears them. It has a display back. There's just more going on here. I prefer the case size of the Daytona, but that's about it. I understand that people have a religious attachment to the Daytona because it was worn by a guy who started a non-profit organic cookie company, but I'm not part of that religion, though I do love those cookies. I will say this, I rarely give watch buying advice, there's just too many variables. But, if you're thinking about getting this Chronomaster because you've always wanted a Daytona, don't. If you're set on a watch and you're this close to having the money to get one, even if you have to wait years, wait. That's the only way you'll be satisfied. As for me, if I had an itch for a modern manufacturer chronograph, one with both legacy and modern innovations, this Chronomaster would probably scratch it. There's a lot here that appeals to me, and from what I can tell, there's a lot here that appeals to other people as well. This watch has inspired heated, dumb debates. And I like that. The way I see it, if people aren't telling you to be quiet, you're not saying the right things.